Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the August 5th, 2025 regular scheduled board meeting. Ask that everyone stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic that stands one nation, God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. We will start with the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Good evening. So as Pleasantville is looking ahead to the next phase of the strategic plan, timing coincides with New York State's efforts to transform how its graduates leave public school on their way to college and careers. That plan was called New York Inspires. It includes several items, one of them being the recent release of New York State's portrait of a graduate. That portrait bears many similarities to Pleasantville's mission statement that features lifelong learning, dynamic thinking, compassionate citizenry, and many other qualities. Pleasantville's 6 strategies regarding leadership, curriculum, wellness, communication, infrastructure, and partnerships address that portrait as well. To get a jump on that planning for what's next, we've set aside time in our annual August administration retreat to discuss vision and refine our thoughts in advance of any community discussions. A couple things from government and law. So we heard about the cell phone ban. So this new law, promoted by Governor Hochul, is actually an internet-enabled device ban, not specifically a cell phone ban. So if you think about cell phones being smartphones versus the old quote-unquote dumb phones, those old dumb phones are okay. Because texting and calling is not against the law. Notably, this is a personal device for students policy, not adults. The goal is to reduce screen time and exposure to the negative effects of social media and unfiltered internet and to increase interpersonal connectivity. Board policy has to be posted by August 1st. Ours is under our tech department on our website. Policy must be adopted and ready for September 1st of this school year. The details include that it is across the whole district campuses, the entirety of the school day. There are many exceptions. The exceptions include for school-issued devices, educational purposes, IEPs, 504s, medical reasons, legal reasons. Daily storage is going to be either in backpacks or in lockers. Contact is going back to what I would call old school. When I was in school, you had to call the office if you want to get in touch with your child. If the child had to contact home, they would have to do the same thing. So we're going to have our office phones, intercoms, and of course parents can email offices. The only disciplinary items noted in the law have to do with suspensions, which just says you can't suspend a student for a cell phone specific violation. Otherwise, the code of conduct applies to cell phones as a school rule as it would any other rule. For reporting, well, 1 year from September, we have to put on the website data on how that was enforced, how many students may have had the code of conduct applied, so that New York State can keep track of implementation. So discussions thus far have been, in addition to the Board of Education, I've had an opportunity to talk with our administrative team, many members of our PTAs, our unit leaders, and students. So for implementation, we're going to be assessing how this is going to work out at BRS, middle school, and the high school as we go. We are going to rely heavily on cooperation with our student population because for this to work well, as with any rule, whether it's running in the hall or like that, there has to be a common language explanation of why we have this. So our administrative teams And our teachers are going to work with our students to make sure we can implement this. We're going to be communicating this not only throughout the summer, but as we start the year. So we're going to use our new Parent Square tool, website, newsletters, of course, meetings, orientation for the kids, every tool we have. Another New York State law, this one totally different, has to do with free meals. So Pleasantville is participating in the National School Lunch Program. So all of its students will be entitled to the New York State Universal Free School Meals Program. That means one full meal for each student, lunch or breakfast at no cost. That does not count a la carte items. So the regular school meal that comes with a piece of fruit and certain items, that's what you'll get for no cost. There are other things you want to buy on top of that, that will be for a cost. And significantly, in the past, to qualify for that, you would have to fill out a form. Now that everyone gets it, there's going to be a temptation not to fill out the form. However, filling out that form also helps the school district qualify for state and federal money. So these are also things we're going to be explaining in communications to the community. And then our code of conduct and our safety plans. Both of those you're going to hear more about at the next board meeting in August. As per New York State law, both the code of conduct and the district safety plan have to be open for public view for 30 days. Both went up in July. So we'll have a hearing at the next board meeting, and then we'll have the opportunity to approve them. In school news, we are hiring a new director of curriculum, instruction, and assessment, which is a fantastic new addition to the Pleasantville School District. The DCIA will help align our K-12 program with New York State standards, advance our instructional vision, and use data to promote student achievement. Having screened applicants and conducted remote interviews in July, we're having our round 1 set up for tomorrow. And then round 2 will be next week, and we will have the DCI in place for the new school year. Also going on right now at Pleasantville is our ESY, our extended school year program designed to support our students with IEPs who may suffer what we call regression, meaning when you leave in June for your summer vacation, you tend to forget a lot of things in the middle before you come back in September. That's normal. So the ESY is intended to help certain students prevent that regression so that they're prepared when they come back in September. In technology, you've heard about Parent Square. You're going to be hearing about that all year. Parent Square is a new tool that will keep not only parents, but our greater community involved with the school district. All district, school, grade level classroom information is now going to be sent to whether it's your computer, phone, by text, or mail. You'll be able to choose. You'll be able to choose your frequency and your mode. You'll be able to sign up for district events, volunteer, and all this again will be communicated frequently throughout the end of this summer and during the school year. And with regards to technology, we're undergoing an Apple transition. So BRS changed to Apple last year. The middle school will be doing the same thing. So the iPad initiative that was successful with Bedford Road School will be happening this year, grades 5 through 8. Each middle school student is going to get an iPad, support learning across all disciplines, to allow creativity, collaboration, and individual instruction. And since these are district issued, they don't fall under the internet-enabled device ban. And each have filters that work both at home and at school. This expansion reflects the district's commitment to leveraging technology to enhance teaching and learning, while providing staff with the training and support needed to ensure effective classroom integration. Details of the one-on-one program will be shared with middle school parents and guardians by a Parent Square agent. Count how many times I say Parent Square. And finally, with construction, in addition to the typical summer maintenance work that goes on in the school, we have several construction projects. Notably the back middle school parking lot on Ashland. That's in the process of being completed in terms of paving and striping. And then high school and middle school bathrooms are having new tile, new walls, new plumbing. And they are ready to be completed as of August 22nd.
Thank you. It's a lot of work being accomplished over the summer. We appreciate everyone that's contributing to that. One thing to point out on the work that's ongoing here, we have two policies. Both the internet enabled price policy, which is a state requirement, as well as the student ex officio board member, which we'll be talking about in a second. But I do want to just go ahead and point out that we are following to a T the New York State law. There's a lot of commentary floating around about interpretations of the law. The law is pretty clear, while it's thin, it is very clear now. And we are going to follow it, but this policy that we're adopting, presumably tonight, not to be presumptuous, is based on pretty much the model theory one that most schools are adhering to. And it's going to be subject to a learning curve. We're going to learn what works and what doesn't work as we go throughout the school year. So vision this as something that is going to be open to change and experience and more conversations, as I'm sure we'll have tonight, about how it's applied, what it's applied to. Some people are going to want less restrictions, some people are going to want more restrictions. We're going to have to see what works, and largely that's going to be coming from the community as well as the agents that are in the room actually applying. So their opinions are going to matter a lot because we don't need to add to an already provided portfolio that everything else is doing. So with that, we'll jump right into the discussion items this week. And the first one we're going to talk about is the student ex officio board member. So last year, the state legislature passed a law requiring school boards to have one representative, at least one representative, from the student body on the school board. That member is a non-voting member, and they are also not required and permitted to attend executive sessions where personnel matters or litigation matters are discussed. We talked about this earlier last year. At the end of last year, we started discussing it. The student government was approached to ask them what would sort of work for them. And we've got a lot of ideas. We're going to implement a program this year and then work on a more robust plan, selection plan following year. So I'll discuss a little bit about what we're putting in place for this year.
Sure, I want to thank Mr. Palumbo and Ms. Bettavino, the high school student government for helping with this, and they've already had discussions. So we're going to have the services of both the 12th grade and 11th grade president and vice president, beginning as early as next board meeting on the 26th. And they're up for discussions on how to integrate student voice into the board and then be a liaison for policy back to the students. And then investigate how to do this.
Any thoughts, comments? I know we had a robust conversation at the end of last year about the selection process. A lot of different ideas were put out there. Whether it be writing an essay, whether it has to come from somebody from student government, whether it should be just a class fellow alongside the other officers. Any thoughts, comments?
I think one thing that we've just sort of asked that we've talked about is that, I think we'll be looking, Dr. Litinsky was talking about looking to the student government to sort of go back and have a lengthier conversation about what a good process looked like with some of the, now that we've sort of seen some of the policies that are coming from other districts that have been doing this, some of them have been doing this for a while, what ones have worked, hasn't worked. So I think it's just really important to still sort of have, make sure the student voice helps us figure out how to do this in a sustainable way, but I think it's a good plan to have the president and vice president for this year and to sort of figure out what's gonna fit for Pleasantville.
Sure, one question. So we're saying there's four, you're saying both the 12th grade and the 11th grade president and vice president would be appointed, and so they wouldn't rotate, or would all four be president?
I think that's a question we're gonna have to answer with them, because one of the, I know this is a part of your discussions last year, because one of the key points of it is that typically students that certainly that are vice president and president of student government, they're busy people. So a rotation is probably more realistic than asking all four to come every single board meeting, twice a month. So I would say a rotation is where we're just gonna start.
Great, thank you.
Right, so moving along, we'll move to the discussion about board liaisons. So this is something personally I've been thinking about as we finished the organizational meeting and we appointed the various board liaisons. So for people that don't know, the board during its organizational meeting sets a number of liaisons for different groups. The number of groups that are involved in Pleasantville is amazing, and we don't represent all of those groups. So one of the things that I wanted to discuss with the board and talk about and encourage is setting up a greater list of liaisons. These wouldn't be members of the various boards and organizations, rather they would be someone designated as a board member that is going to check in from time to time, monthly, bi-weekly, depending on what's going on, and seeing what those groups are doing, what support they need, what issues they're having. And forge a greater level of communication with these groups, because it strikes me that some of the groups don't even realize that they can come to them. They don't know who necessarily to turn to when they have questions, when they have facilities issues. They're trying to get space in the library, they're not sure who to call, sometimes those questions just die because they don't figure, I don't know who to ask, so I'm just not gonna ask. We're gonna try to combat that. One of the things that I did over the weekend was I got the list of organizations that are approved to use school facilities. Now, this list tends to be a list that grows over time because it doesn't, the groups that fall away don't actually get approved. We've looked into that, and sometimes it's tricky to actually figure out who's still using it. But it's a good jumping off point, where we can reach out and look at some of these groups and decide, which ones we should at least initially reach out to. There's no cap on the number, so that there are these during the public comments time, if there are groups that you think are left off the list, this is what this is for. We can revisit it, we can say we're gonna add 5 liaisons tonight. Next board meeting, we can add another 10. If there are people that are interested or there are groups that are interested in one of these. With that, questions, comments, thoughts?
So, right, so right now we have, each of the PTAs has a liaison, we have some facilities, we have for safety. And so, but what we don't have are, for example, things like Science Olympiad or FOBA, and so, or like, the, community groups that exist. And so I was thinking about, I think what's challenging in thinking about how to structure this is who needs support changes depending on what might be happening in the community or within that particular group, right? If there's a big leadership position happening, like the PFL, or there is, a huge need that rises, and we never really know from year to year what's gonna pop up. So I think I see sort of a couple of paths forward here, and I'm really interested in like one thing I thought about was, well, we can sort of identify the particular groups where we know they need additional support, so we've heard from them or they're very active, and we can just pick those handful. The other thing I thought about was we can sort of think about buckets, like, we talk about the 3 A's, arts, academics, athletics, some community-based groups. And we can sort of think about it in bigger buckets. So there's sort of a couple of ideas that I thought was a few, pick some specific groups, or we can think about these buckets. And then if something is going on with multiple groups in these buckets, then we can pull in each other for support. But I'm a little worried about having like 15 new liaisons, just because we already each have like 3 or 4, plus more stuff, and I don't wanna drop them all. So that's why I'm balancing out from you guys with other folks.
I have a similar concern where I don't want it to fall off, like to start really strong with communicating, then it kind of falls off once the other things start to roll, so. We talked about maybe on a rotation, having more than one board member, so it like doesn't fall at the waistline, but I like the idea of the buckets. Because then we can pick from the list, put them into categories, and then maybe have 1 or 2 board members kind of rotate those, so it doesn't feel. Because it's important that we reach out to them. especially some that are having things that are going on right now, or you know, like Dad's Club gets very, very busy in the fall. Involved in sports and activities, and I'm sure others on this list, so I do appreciate like the idea of putting them to those buckets.
The only concern I have with putting them in buckets is that it creates less direct necessarily contact.
Okay.
You know, I don't wanna put more on everyone's plate, I know that everyone is looking very hard towards this. You know, I view it a lot like safety and communication is something that we're never gonna stop talking about, we're never gonna stop exploring as things change, as different groups have different needs. I think picking groups that we know that need help and ones that are underrepresented by their very nature and reaching out to them and see if they even want these. They may not, they may say, thank you, but we're not interested. I think it's worthwhile. And depending on what the need is, the check-in can be, the safety committee meetings are not that often, right? So it's not gonna be super time intensive unless it needs to. And at that point, you know, if we have to pull in a different board member or another board member, I think it will serve us well. So I would like to see somebody for FOBA, for Science Olympiad, for Dad's Club, for ASO. There was I'm still looking into seeing if it is, it's still in place. But there used to be a committee of various religious leaders in Pleasantville, and they would all get together, interfaith. And meet and have lunch and talk about what's going on in the community, I think reaching out to them. You know, somebody reaching out to the senior center and you know, developing a relationship there, finding out what their questions that they have. You know, that are just not reaching us, they don't know how to reach us, or they're not, you know. The mailers went out for the community forum last Tuesday, some people didn't get. So why didn't they get them, and you know, that's concerning, because we're sort of out of options besides carrier pigeons for sending messages. So, you know, having that personal touch is sort of the last area, and I think, you know, we're gonna talk more about expanding as soon as September comes around, we're gonna start having the coffee hours again down at Black Cow, it'll be available. I'm committed to staying after board meetings for anybody that wants to stop and chat about whatever's on their mind, we're willing to spend the time, we're willing to listen, we're willing to talk. What strikes me though is, you know, one of the things that happened with the coffee hour was people would see you and they wouldn't necessarily approach you with a question. And I think you have to be more proactive. I was always very active when I was there because I just like to chat with people, especially when having multiple cups of coffee. So I would approach them and talk about just what's going on. You know, I'm gonna see you at the soccer game later today. Are you going to the fireman's parade? You know, what are you wearing to the Halloween parade? And inevitably it would turn into, oh, by the way, I was wondering. Right, and so I think we have to have more of those conversations, by the way, I was wondering conversations where we have to be proactive in sort of seeking out the questions. So I think it's a good starting point. There are groups that we have not mentioned tonight that need to have a liaison. We have to seek them out and also ask, you know, people that have the questions that want a liaison for their group, reach out. Because, you know, I will join as many of these, I will be the liaison for as many of them as possible. Within reason, and I think that my fellow board members feel the same. So I know this is a discussion item, so it's not like a formal appointment, but we'll come up with a list and we'll put it on the next board and we'll start reaching. Are there any other groups other than the ones that I've mentioned that I've left off the list that are high on the list of groups that we should be?
I mean, one that jumped out at me, not just because there's so many participants and different chapters, was the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, just because it's only. I think it's positive. You and the audience, because it's such a, and it's disparate, right, because there's a lot of different troop leaders. And that sort of thing.
I know for Boy Scouts at least, people have to work with the school board, we ask them to push back. And Jerry's are part of that, they can contribute.
So, just for a second, just so everybody can hear this.
Sorry.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay.
You want to hear this? Donna's looking up right now.
Okay, yes. I don't know what I've never.
So, yeah, no, it's worth- Not public comment, this is, we just actually come up and.
Okay, yeah, so
Let's go.
I know for Boy Scouts, I'm on the committee for Boy Scouts and we tried to reach out to the school before to get in on like the back to school nights to try to recruit and do things for the school, because I have two sons, both are aspiring Eagles. And they need projects to do and would love to do things for their school, but we don't have any connection with the school or the board, and I know for Boy Scouts, I don't have girls, so I can't speak to that. We'd love to be able to have a liaison to, or have me come
You
talk to
got
you
it,
about Scouts.
okay, I'm your liaison now.
Okay, I'm Leslie, by the way. Nice to meet you.
You got it, I will,
Okay,
I would see major objection, I will.
okay.
No, that sounds great, and it sounds like we should, and I think we should.
Yeah, I think I reached out to like.
I have 3 girls, so we have to adjust the most.
Okay, no, I'm sorry if we reached out to the Cubs and the Girl Scouts too. They would probably feel the same way that the Boy Scouts do, but I know we'd love to have work with the school more if we could. And I can give you my.
Fantastic, yeah, well, get to you after, yeah, or just leave, if you're not gonna stay the whole meeting, just leave it out, and I'll shoot you a text.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you. Anybody else want to shout at the group? Didn't mention. We're gonna start with this list, but approach me after if you don't feel comfortable getting up, it's completely fine. You have our contact information, you can get in contact with us, I'll be here after the meeting. Anybody watching that wants a liaison, same holds true. All right, and any other thoughts on that?
How will we be able, as a public, to find out this?
It'll be on the website. There's in the board area, so the question was, how does somebody find the list of who's the liaisons appointed? And the answer is on the board, on the website, on the board page, there's a list of committee appointments. And it has the committee and the board appointed liaison for that, in some cases it's 2, but that's for this board page.
Board assignments.
Board assignments, thank you. So the next thing we're going to speak about is the capital project timeline. So we talked about this a little bit last Tuesday about setting a date by which we're gonna make a decision, by which we're going to have a vote, we're going to propose to the public the project, whatever form it takes. I would like to set that date, I'd like to set that date tonight. I don't want to rush the process. I think that the process is important, I think we learned a lot, I think personally, I learned a lot from the last community forum. I think we just need to pick an end date so that we can start calculating times backwards, so that we have milestones that we know we can meet. The date that I'm thinking of in my head, and I'm speaking for myself, not the board, is the May vote. The reason is because I still think that there's a lot of work to be done on this, and I don't want to rush it necessarily. And so I also don't think it makes sense to have a vote in February, and we're gonna have a May vote right afterwards. I think it's a burden on the administration and on everybody just getting out and getting informed. So that would be my proposal. That is my thoughts, not the rest of the board. So I'm gonna turn it over to the rest of the board for their thoughts.
I can go next, I'll be next. So I think that makes sense. I think we were all hoping to do it a bit earlier, originally, but I think, you know, based on the feedback we've heard from the community about sort of aligning it with the regular budget vote and the fact that, you know, we need more time. I think that makes sense. I think my question to the administration was like, I think the big pressure we've all been feeling is around, you know, the sort of ability to delay some of those projects, particularly, you know, the fields and the sort of status of the fields and the track. And so I know we've done some recent work on sort of getting that assessment, and I personally really just like to hear from them. My preference would be to go with the main vote. I also want to make sure that we feel like the timeline that will set us up for that our facilities can survive until then, be safe. And I, because I know there's been some discussion about whether kind of their useful life, and I think we all know they're approaching that, but I think we've gotten enough evidence that they're not quite there yet, and maybe we can push it out if we invest in more resources, but I would love to hear. Thanks, John. Sorry, putting you on the spot, John.
So right now, we have, we have a community facilities committee set up. And we started working together, and the very first meeting, the committee actually went through a list. And we put all the items into 4 buckets. And one bucket is the items that was identified, that was voted on in December. And those projects that do not need further review, everyone thought that should go forward. And didn't, it's not subject to subcommittee review. So that's one bucket. And another bucket is the items that need review. So there were 3 subcommittees set up. And then also we have the BCI, BCS items that needs to be reviewed. And then also the director of the facility actually came up with a list. So there's a list of that list. And then also the last one is actually we solicited ideas from our community. So these are the 4 buckets. And I think of all the items that we have identified, I don't know, we are under review or do not under review. I think the one project that concerns me is actually the BRS chillers, the HVAC. You know, we have 3 large units and one is totally gone and that cannot be repaired because we can't even find parts for the other 2. So we are using the 3rd one to make the other 2 work. So I keep talking to Steve Chamberlain, saying, oh, we need to get this going. And I think the thing is that obviously with capital projects, you know, I hope the community will support, but that experience that the last ball went down. So if we really think that this project must go forward, we can actually, for this particular project, I'm just talking about the RS chillers, we can actually do the designing early on. And just spend the money, just design that part. So it will be all ready to go. And after the vote, if the project is approved, within a week or 2, we can send it to SCD for. And since it's a replacement, you know, we're not going to do redesigning. The review process probably is going to be short. Usually it's 9 months. But let's say we send it in June, 9 months later, we're talking about the following spring, and then we can bid it out, and this can be summer 2027 project. This is the only project that I'm really concerned. This January, we actually met with the original installer of the turf field, the main field. And he did a walk through with myself and Steve Chamberlain. And he gave us an assessment. He felt that if we can keep up the maintenance of the field twice a year, they can go for probably 3 months. So we are okay with that, with the May vote. Because in my head, if we do a May vote, that's 2026, then the construction time is probably going to be spring 2028. Because it requires some designing, and then we submit it to the SCD for review, it's 9 months review, and then we have to bid it out. And then the best time is actually in spring. When you do it in spring, probably take the hill out for 1 season.
So just to clarify, so what I hear you saying is, so the most concerning is the chillers, but you think we can get that done by summer 2027, assuming the vote is successful.
Right.
And then the rest of it would be summer 2028, and we can sort of invest in our fields enough to keep them going until then.
Right. And the reality with the chillers is BRS is that the worst case scenario, if the bond gets rejected, we still have to do it one way or the other. Then we have to find a way. And probably we had to use the reserve funds or something to do it. And, that's something that we cannot not do, because then you're not gonna have fresh air, you're not gonna have AC, and you're not gonna have heat, here's the problem. So that's my thought about that project.
I have just a quick question. Are there any items that would be fast tracked? Like, for example, security issues, things like that, that if you had to upgrade that, could those go through the system faster?
You can go through the system faster if you have a third party. And even if third party review, I've done that before. It speed up a little bit, but it's not that fast. And then you have to spend extra money because you have to pay for the reviewer. Rather than using the SCP staff.
So if we know we have to, we have to do each other, one way or the other, we have to replace them, whether they're part of the bond or otherwise. Is there a way where we can do the plans for them now? Pay for it now, enter into contracts now, start the review process with S&P now. And then refine, like, we use bridge finance in effect, float our own financing for the interim. And if this is not a question that you've heard before and want to think about it a little bit.
No, we definitely can use fund balance to do it, and the best way to do it is actually you float bond, because you pay it off gradually, and then you get state aid matching. I mean, we have 54%. S&P will not review it without voters.
So what I'm hearing you say is that
Capital project has to be approved by voters.
is the
Whether it's our own money or donation or it doesn't really matter funding source. So we can expand fund now. We can get it architect, be an architect, and do the planning. Vote immediately after the vote, the packaging go to this. You see that is instructional space. So there's no question that we said state aid is the field that you have to attach an instructional space to it.
And what do we have an idea of what the cost to rewire this would be? To start doing the plans now so that we're ahead when, assuming that the bill passes, we're.
With the architect usually is probably 6 to 8% of the total cost. And we cost out that project, I think, $100 amount, it's probably bar pop.
So if it doesn't go through the capital project process, it's not eligible for state aid, is that right?
You can't do it.
That's what I mean, like if we pay for it with fund balance, like you mentioned, like I'm trying to think about like what if.
We definitely need voters approval, but we don't need to float the bond. We can use our own funds to do it if we have.
Got it.
But we cannot borrow money, the borrowing has to
Yeah, of course.
approve.
Is there a backup plan if it goes?
What in reality is that when you think about it, when we put together the last package, our financial partners said, actually, we have $1.1 million. We have over $700,000 left over from the middle school HVAC project. And then also we have the HVAC leftover was $300,000, and then we had the reserve fund that was $700,000. So altogether it was $1.1 million. So that should probably pay for the whole thing. But we still need to have voters for capital project. But question is that you use that to do a capital project, you can actually do more. With your whole. That's the only project that I'm concerned.
But the May timeline will still serve us.
Yes, I think we would just do it 2027. Because when you really think about it, originally our original plan was December, we're still thinking about 2027.
So we still feel, that's my question, so we still feel confident that. we can work with what we have until December 2027.
I think.
Obviously, I wanna make sure that we have a plan, right? If something happens and that we're not able, like, how confident are we that we can get this equipment to last that long? And if we are not confident, do we have a backup plan? Because not, as you said, not having it work is not an option, right? So,
I think this key, just keep getting, keep getting someone to come check and make sure everything is going well and see whatever.
But even if I'm doing the math right, even if we did a November vote, we would still be talking about the same summer.
That's right, because
So it's not changing the
you can
time,
only,
we're still gonna get having.
you can only do it in the summertime. And also another piece of information, Donna actually did this research and she checked with Westchester Board of Election. And there are 2 months that are even blackout here.
November is a month.
November is one, so we would not be able to use the machines until December.
So 1 month before the November election, 1 month after the election, we will not be able to get a machine.
that's only the December goal.
So, I mean, what I'm hearing is even if we did like an October capital project, we're still doing work at the same exact time. So why not spend the extra time and round out the rest of the answers that we're still.
Yeah, so I think that I'm definitely in favor of the May timeframe, and I think about the work on the facilities committee, looking at, and I think about the invigoration of the committee by adding new board members, new administrators. We have a director of curriculum that should be coming on that will have an input into some of our subcommittees, which I think will be extremely valuable. So I think to give that process adequate time, I think waiting until a May 2026 vote probably be appropriate. I think the other aspect of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, but depending upon the size of the bond we end up with, but we do enter into that area of potentially tax neutral from a capital project perspective, because those bonds would be rolling off when we do that.
I just want to be sure, the tax levy neutral will be for the debt service line.
Correct.
Okay, not the whole budget, so.
Well, that's right. No, we're talking specifically about the capital projects.
I like how you try to pretend that you're correct again, you're like, yes, correct.
I got it. I got you. Right, but correct, but that may.
Yeah, the reality is that, we have bond council, and once the label is set, he will prepare a packet for us, the date, all the days that we have to follow, get to and after of the vote. And we prepared this for the last December vote, so we'll get another one once the date is set.
So I think right now we're aligned. I don't think it's an item that we're voting on formally tonight. So there'll be opportunity for the public to speak on this, and that's. As of right now, that's what is in our head, that it's not a permanent fix. That sound fair? Okay, on to the last discussion bit. We're gonna talk a little bit about the strategic plans. And so I spent a little time this weekend and I wrote a little something, so I'm gonna read it to you. As an initial matter, I want to thank all the community members who came out to the community forum last week. It really gave me, and I think a lot of us, food for thought. One point in particular that resonated with me was the absence of a true strategic plan. That's something that's been on the board radar for a very long time. Many community members volunteered a very large amount of time working on the last strategic plan. It helped us forge a large number of improvements and initiatives that have become some of the bedrock of our schools. In hearing feedback from our community, both at the forum and afterwards, it is clear to me that we should be working to clarify the district's strategic vision and priorities in the immediate term and begin to discuss the next steps for the development of a new strategic plan. With that in mind, I want to take a few moments to talk about a history of our strategic plan, sort of how we got here, and the current plan that we're wrapping up right now, Pleasantville Schools 2026. The initiative began with a couple of big questions. The first was, what will Pleasantville Schools do to prepare the class of 2026
the kindergarten class of 2013-14 for their future? And second, what will those students experience that will support Pleasantville's reputation as an outstanding place for families to live and children learn? These questions were foundation for our first 5-year strategic plan, which guided our decisions from 2014 to 2019. Building on that success, phase 2 kicked off in early 2019. This time, a new team of dedicated volunteers, including members of the Board of Education, community members, students, faculty, all came together. Their goal was to review, research, discuss what would be best to prepare our students for the future. By June of that year, the team had identified and the Board of Education had adopted 6 new key strategies, which Dr. Levitsky mentioned earlier: leadership, curriculum, wellness, communication, infrastructure and resources, and partnerships. Following that, from late 2019 into early 2020, over 100 volunteers, many meetings, refined that, met about it. They met with administrators, teachers, students, parents, community members, and they joined 6 different teams to create specific action plans for each of those strategies. Unfortunately, best laid plans encounter obstacles sometimes. In this case, we all know what happened hopefully. The prior process of large in-person meetings obviously was no longer feasible. It degraded the process and people moved to Zoom, and there was less involvement as people were worried and getting other things at the time. This process resulted in the creation of many goals without the robust personal discussion and debate in a bigger group, and in a lot of cases, meaningful discussions with those charged with achieving the goals. In 2021, a decision was made to pivot from the existing strategic plan, opting instead to focus on a more limited set of goals. While the foundational tenets from phase 2 were reserved, the vital component of community engagement was regrettably largely set aside. I wholeheartedly believe in our current objectives and commend the remarkable progress achieved by our dedicated teachers, administrators, and staff. However, I know that with the end of the most recent strategic plan, we need to take the time to discuss and determine the best path forward to meet both current and future needs. With that, turn it over to Dr. Levitsky to explain some of the work he's done, and then my fellow trustees to discuss sort of their thoughts on the issue.
Thank you. Yeah, so based on the feedback and our recent discussions, that's why we decided to include in our August as an administrative team, our annual August retreat on the 13th and 14th. So based on these discussions, we've included discussions on vision, so that we can start as an administrative team. Certainly, I'm interested in hearing the administrators who have been here and know and lived a lot of the history you just explained. What we've been doing and start brainstorming our next edition, so that as we start these community discussions, the admin team will have a input. So we'll be able to inform the board and the community what our thoughts are, and then as you talked about that key chemical combining of those different elements of our community, and produce the next, say, the strategic.
I think in general, it's important, as you said, for us to kind of outline a roadmap. I know there's still work that has to be done and priorities that have to be, or goals that we still haven't attained, so obviously those, but I think to have a clear vision and mission, goals and priorities to give a better roadmap. It doesn't have to be maybe a full ready to go strategic plan, but maybe just a brainstorming idea process of what we see happening in the next couple of years, but we're in a little bit of like a gray where the strategic plan that's been around since pre-COVID didn't kind of complete, but we're still in a lot of the work that has been done. But I do think that we need a clear roadmap moving forward from this year to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm thinking about it in two ways. One is the immediate plan and then the new strategic plan, right? So it takes just looking at what's on our plates this year. In terms of, capital projects, superintendent search, onboarding a director of curriculum, many other things I'm forgetting at the moment. There's a lot of big buckets of work, and so I think we have to find a way to strike the balance between, I think, the real and valid feedback that in order to do this work well, we need a clear vision and direction. For the district with a set of like really well articulated priorities. And this is certainly not the year to launch a strategic planning process, right? In my opinion. I also think we will want the permanent superintendent on board to be a part of that process, right? So I think my proposal or my thinking about it would be.
I think though, what if you guys have a microphone on still, so maybe that's like interfering. Where was it?
Another group week.
Be.
Okay.
So I think, and I, in my life, done many strategic planning processes, they're intense, right? And, so I think what I would say is. We do have our central tenants, there are things. That there were goals from last year, really big goals that the administration was working on that are gonna be carried forward this year around curriculum writing. It's obviously, there has to be a big part of that. ACT rollout that's continuing to be tweaked. So my proposal would be a couple of things. One is sort of look the administration to go back and say, of those 6 pillars. What are the pieces, what are sort of what's the vision for what the district wants to be focusing on in those areas for the next, years. And if there are pieces from the existing strategic plan that, a lot of it didn't, some of it did not get finished. But if there are things that we want to bring that need to be brought forth there, then that should be sort of integrated together with the things that maybe pre-COVID were not on our radar, but are now AI sort of rollout and all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things that have changed since 2019, right? So my feeling would be if we can find a way to really marry like what is the articulating that vision and those specific sort of priorities under those pillars. And then, beginning to, as we get, some of these other pieces of work on the way that we can start to think about their process might look like for a long-term strategic plan. But I think it's just not realistic to roll that out.
Yeah,
I think it's the best thing because it's not gonna happen.
There's just too much to understand.
I'll let that, I wasn't suggesting that
Yeah.
we're adopting one tonight.
No.
But I do think that it's important, like, we need to give the teachers the time to finish the curriculum writing, especially with the curriculum director coming on in the short term, that may involve so anybody who doesn't know, we adopted 2 goals a couple of years ago and decided that we were gonna focus on just 2 items. And work on them for a longer period of time, instead of making them an annual goal, we were gonna give them like a 5-year goal, and it was curriculum writing and ICT. And that work is still in process. We met at the end of last year and heard where they are, they're all on track, they've met their deadlines, the milestones. But we need to give them the time to finish this work, we told them that they would have 5 years, they get 5 years. And maybe more depending, because now we're trying to vertically integrate the curriculum with a new position. So they may need a little bit more time to refine it. We want to make sure that this is a valuable product that it ends up being produced from this. They spent a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of effort on this. And so we want to support that. But it's not too early to start thinking about, because I'm not sure that the old strategic plan, like we definitely have community involvement, but is it a plan or is it a thinking map? Or something, some other form that other districts are using? We can start doing the legwork and working with the administration, start thinking about what does that process even look like, right? I mean, I think the community is going to be a massive part of this because we saw so many people volunteer. I mean, there were hundreds of people volunteered for it last go around, both in phase 1 and phase 2. So I would assume and would hope that the rest of the community would want to be part of this in some way, shape, or form. But what exactly that process, what it's focused on, is still something we don't know. But we can start thinking. And I think it is appropriate not to add on to this year's portfolio of work, let's start thinking about like, hey, this is coming, we have to start thinking about this, these are some of the ideas, this is what the administration is thinking. They started to think about where are our weaknesses, what do we need to improve on? And I think that's where we can at least begin. Process.
Can you, just fill me in, I was in part, those meetings, what is the time frame? You know, what time frame do that take in terms of developing something?
I mean, it was months with it, yeah. And like pretty regular meetings with different there were tons of different subgroups focusing on every aspect you can imagine. And they met quite often, I think they were over paced for larger meetings. So
It's pretty intricate, it's pretty involved, because depending on, like our district has pillars, but then you have people within those pillars that are doing very specific work within like. The bigger, but like you said, the curriculum writing alone, with a new director of curriculum to align something horizontally and vertically is ongoing. Curriculum writing would be an ongoing goal of this strategic plan for years to come. But I think giving the teachers the breather that they know this is still your goal and this is what your focus is, and but bringing them and then coming into that conversation, I think, is important. I do agree that maybe we all do need to start talking about it, so we have at least in the back of our minds an idea of what we might want to do, and maybe some of the goals that were this year or last year or before I was on the board can be part of a new strategic plan moving forward.
I think the only thing I was gonna add was I think that thinking about a process of the next strategic plan is really important. What I don't wanna have lost though in that conversation is we still need to provide that vision and direction for the next 1 to 2 years as well, right? So I think that's the balance I'm trying to find, because particularly if you think about a future superintendent search, having that sort of, you know, clear is gonna be critical to making sure, the critical piece of making sure that everybody sort of is aligned, both, you know, administration, teachers, community, board, about what we're looking for and what things we are trying to push forward. In terms of where we wanna see the district go. So I think that's the balance I'm trying to find, is I don't wanna spend so much time talking about what a future process would look like, that we don't focus in on like what the next 1 to 2 years looks like, because I know you were not saying. We should vote on something tonight. And I do think we do need that sort of articulated vision and priorities. As a new speaker.
So many good things and relevant things were just said. So first of all, based on what I've seen from Pleasantville, Pleasantville is a strategic plan veteran district. We've been at it for a while, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. Some are 3 years, some are 5 years, and they have different scopes. So in terms of where we are now, Pleasantville is not a square ball. It didn't just stop because the date ended on this. So there are things happening, there are things moving, and the roadmap analogy, you know, sometimes it's, you know, the point of the journey is necessarily always the destination. It's the journey itself and the learning that happens. So I think having this year for not a pause, but if you think about instruction and assessment, you give the instruction, you give the assessment, then you find out what worked. This is our way of finding out what worked. And one of the things that can happen, particularly with schools and teachers, is initiative fatigue. We just finished this, now you're giving us this other thing that we have to do. So all those strategies, they weren't completed and put in the box, and then we're done, and let's figure out some, those were done for a reason. So we're still using those strategies, so those are all good. So I think the point of this year can be that assessment, that, you know, where are we on the road? We do have direction, we have a mission, we have it's always gonna be a constant state of group improvement, looking at where we are, what we need, and what are the options and products. So I think that the state we're in right now is absolutely fine. And we do have the time to, as I mentioned, the administrators will be able to chime in, they'll be able to get teachers involved. Things like the ex officio board member, you're probably gonna have more student involvement this time than last time. And then certainly the community, and not only the parents, but there were, how many community groups on that list? 60. You're gonna have a lot of them. So, taking this year for that assessment and that redirect, particularly the second half of the year. Because like I said, you guys are better, it's not like you're starting fresh. So perhaps that second half of the year going into the superintendent search, those things can be melded together. For the next phase. So I think we're in good shape.
Okay, with that, I'm going to close our discussion items and move on to recognition of the audience. It is the practice of the Pleasantville Board of Education to allow for public expression during recognition of the audience in accordance with District Policy 1510. Interested school district members and district residents are asked to state their name and address, direct their comments to all members of the board. As a reminder, public comment should be limited to 5 minutes. After all those wishing to offer public comment have done so, those who would like to offer additional comments may do so at the discretion of the board president, provided no single person shall exceed 10 minutes in total during any one meeting. Comments either neutral, positive, or negative relating to specific individuals will not be permitted. Complaints about school personnel, students, and school matters should be made in accordance with District Policy 3230. All speakers are expected to conduct themselves in a respectful and courteous manner. The public comment period is intended to allow school district members and district residents to present commentary to the board. As no individual member of the Board of Education can act independently, responses to questions or comments in most cases are not possible, but the board will take such comments under consideration. Questions will be considered by the board or referred to the superintendent as applicable for consideration and response. With that being said, is there anyone who would like to speak? Please.
Ben Wilbers, this is the second time I'm speaking, and I haven't spoken in about 25 years at a school board meeting. My name is Dennis DeCosta. I live at 7 Sanford Street in the town of Mount Pleasant, but we think that we're village residents too. I have remarks about a certain issue, but I just wanted to say something about the strategic plan and other key initiatives. To urge you, not saying you do because I have not been part, don't operate in silo. Because there are best practices out there from other districts here and across the country. So look for best practices. You may disagree with me, but I learned something when I represented the Army and went into Grenada the year after Reagan invaded. And someone there told me in the Army that it's all been done. It's all been done before. You know, maybe the faces have changed, but there's nothing new. It's just that it's taking different shapes. So don't operate in silo. Secondly, look at the resources that exist. You may, regarding the strategic plan, partner with a graduate program at PACE. Students, senior program project to look at other districts with like sizes. We're a relatively small district. We have 3 buildings. So if there are other school districts, they can help do some legwork and some research, and so it may be helpful because there are resources out there. And in terms of members of the community, not that you do this, but I've seen previous boards, maybe 25 years ago, is not to welcome people in the community, everybody. It's to actively seek their engagement. There's a very big difference to say, if you come, you're welcome, and to go out there. So, changing tone a bit. On June 3rd, the board announced that our superintendent had resigned, but there was no comment as to why she stepped down or why it took effect on June 30th with an interim starting the very next day. At minimum, this abrupt transition deprives students, staff, and Dr. Latinsky of a meaningful handoff, one that can preserve what's vital, which is institutional knowledge and continuity. A month later, according to the Examiner, and that's the only source we have, it was revealed that it seemed not to be a simple resignation, that in fact, the superintendent departing was paid nearly $300,000 your salary, extended benefits, and a substantial retirement contribution. That's probably fair. However, it seemed not to be a resignation, it seemed to be a negotiated separation. When you factor in legal fees and search fees and justified compensation for both an interim and a new superintendent, you're really talking about a cost of over $500,000 theoretically. And that's previously unbudgeted public money. Again, my remarks tonight are based on the examiner's reporting because the board opted, perhaps for sound reason, to withhold information about the settlement. But to those of us who are just coming into this, it seems to be contrary to the civic values our schools are meant to teach. And it fostered some mistrust. I'm not saying community-wide at all. And the reason I say some mistrust is because the facts, or what are presented to us as the facts by the examiner, only came to light July 8th, and tonight's meeting is August 5th, both in the heart of summer, and a lot of people are away and unaware. And I think once more people are aware, some will be concerned, including parents or current parents of students. But it's obviously never too late to change course. We understand that legal agreements may impose limits, but this isn't just a personal matter, it's a public matter. Because when taxpayer dollars are involved, transparency isn't optional, it's essential, and I know as you understand, it's your obligation. So I respectfully ask the board to consider some meaningful steps. I was gonna say to restore public confidence, not that you've lost it, but to reinforce and strengthen public confidence. And that is hosting some sort of a forum where you can address this issue, the settlement, and answer some of our questions as far as you can go, because there's more to the story. And by recommitting to transparency in capital project planning, by thoroughly and clearly explaining the issues in a non-inside baseball way, as if, you know, like I am hearing it for the first time. I at the forum that I attended last week, again, maybe it's me, this is not my first language, it's Portuguese, so maybe I didn't get it. But I didn't fully understand the three areas that you were, you know, that you proffered are the areas we need to address. Not fully, I didn't get it. And as you discussed tonight, scheduling a vote after you kind of clarify what the issues are. And that vote, as you discussed tonight, should occur so that we see the full ramifications of the budget and the bond and how it will impact our finances. And so this isn't about blame. It's uncomfortable, believe it or not, for me to speak this way. Not in the past, I kind of did it a lot. But it's not about blame, it's about accountability. And it's about recognizing, as I believe you do, that every decision you make in a particular moment cascades and has rippling effects beyond that moment. And I have to say this, that those of us, or just Dennis, just me, raising concerns, it doesn't mean we're anti-school or anti-student. Not at all. Those of us, many of us who are a bit older, are the same people, and I'll say it again, who support, help build what was then the new PRS. And many of us have grandkids in the schools now, and even if we don't, we still have views. We wanted our schools and students to thrive then, and we want our schools to thrive now and in the future. But it requires trust and transparency. And for whatever reason, what was presented doesn't seem to be the complete story. And we're entitled to a little bit more information. Don't let the media paint a picture without presenting as much as you can say. And so I'm hoping, and I just speak for myself, that this could be a course correction, a teachable moment, as it were, not just in policy, but in principle. And I say these comments with the utmost respect. I've served on committees, not on the school board. I tried a few times. But I know it's hard, and I appreciate what you do in your volunteering, but it's been a little unsettling. And as I said, it brought me back from the crypt. Anyway, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Trying to think of 14 federal thing. I want to thank you, Dennis, for that. I think that was a good, I guess, summary of kind of community sentiment that I can do. It's way more eloquently than probably I would have. What I wanted to address was the timeline. And point out a few things. First of all, the facilities committee, which I'm a member, had a discussion about this timeline very early in our process. A number of members of the facilities committee got together. The distribution of the working group list of facilities committee was not made available to all of us, so we got everybody that we could together. The discussion was about about a mini bond or whatever at the time. And we came up with the conclusion that you don't need to wait. That most of the items on the list, security, Bedford Road Playground, infrastructure upgrades at PRS and the high school, or home security, excuse me, lighting at the auditorium, field and track replacement, all non-controversial. Would get passed. You don't need more time. You did actually a pretty good job explaining those issues in the fall prior to the bond vote. So I'm not sure that we need. I mean, maybe Lucas, has expanded the idea of what could happen at Bedford Road Circle Playground, and that needs, maybe deserves a bit more time. I'm certainly in favor of doing that, honestly. But I think that what I heard, a couple of observations about that timeline. What I heard was there was a reluctance to do the mini vote, in part because we replaced the track and field without having permanent lights in there. You are no longer able to have permanent lights for the next 10 to 12 years. So if that is a motivation for pushing this timeline to May, when things like the chiller and security is at issue, I would have an honest conversation with the community about that. And not just sort of hide it behind, we need more time, or, we're not sure what the community would want. In addition, I do think you could get bathrooms, the turf between the track and the field, maybe get artificial turf there. Some other things that are on that thing that I think are possible. One of the motivations that we said to push the vote sooner than later, and I'd be interested in your guys' commentary on this, is that certainly it's no surprise to anybody in the audience that the federal support for school systems, it's not as robust as it was in years past, let's put it that way. And in fact, I believe there are 13 state attorney generals who are suing the government because they have the week or two before school started, canceled promised aid to the states for schools. And I'm concerned, and I would like your take on it. I know there are rules in the state of New York that prevent it, but billions of dollars of federal aid are all of a sudden withheld. I'm sure that those rules will be stressed in terms of what it means for local state aid. And if we've got a big bond project and the longer you push it, I fear the greater the risk that pressures from or adverse conditions coming from the federal government could impact our abilities to get matching state aid. And again, I understand that each year that state aid gets renewed, so it may only be a year before if something bad happened. But nonetheless, prudence would dictate, given what's going on, that, in my opinion anyways, that any financing that you want to do or contemplate, you do sooner than later. Additionally, it's been lost in the shuffle, but we do have temporary lights on the fields. What we don't have, which numbers of people in this community worked on, was a lighting policy. We were reminded during the facilities committee by a school official that, hey, we can do whatever we want with the lights because we don't have a lighting policy, because the bond vote failed. Dr. Chow quickly corrected that because it created a fairly big stir. I sent you guys an email about that. voicing my concern that, you know, you got a school official that's seemingly angry over the fact that the bond didn't pass and now is feeling, you know, that they can do whatever they want with the lights. Regardless, we need a lighting, if you're gonna have lights there, whether they're temporary or permanent, we need a lighting policy. Many community members spent many hours working with you guys to come up with one, to not have one is not fair. So I would recommend that you reinvigorate that at the top of everything else you got on your plate. I know it's a lot. I don't think it'll be a lot to get that policy in place because quite frankly, a lot of that work was done. And finally, I applaud the strategic plan. I don't know how much it informs the facilities committee at this point because it's nascent. But my hope is that whatever work that you are able to do, or regardless of which direction the strategic plan, as I voiced last time, is very much needed. And would very much help inform many aspects, not just the facilities committee, but many aspects of how you guys or how the district moves forward. So those were my thoughts for you. Thank you.
Thank you. So. A couple of responses to that. I'm just gonna jump in, I'm gonna speak for myself, not really, so the board, first the board can jump in. Reason behind not doing the big. What you described is pretty much the entire bond package. It felt completely tone deaf after hearing so many people feeling like the process wasn't robust enough to go out and win. That's my personal view, that what came up was STEM issues that I personally wasn't aware of and became concerned about. The BRS playground, for me, had always been a very big component of this. I became very concerned that we weren't allocating real money to it. I think it was like 475,000. And I'm just looking at construction costs and I'm saying, you know, I want to re-envision BRS. How am I doing this with this amount of money? Told it was enough, I just wasn't confident that it was enough. And for those reasons, in large part, to those two reasons and the fact that it felt really tone deaf after the community just told us we didn't do a good job communicating. To go out and immediately, without having a more robust committee, people meeting, coming up with a plan, fully developing STEM, fully developing VRS, fully having the discussions about the fields and the lighting, it just felt like it would really leave a bad taste in everybody's mouth and feel like I'm just the fiat up there doing what I want to. So we delayed it. Speaking to the federal funds issue.
Hold on, can I add something to that, Mike?
I'm sure.
Transition.
Oh,
I know, I'm sorry.
don't stop.
Which is to say that I think I'll just be honest, folks where the lights in the field were not their primary concern. I personally will say, I heard a lot of feedback that the bond structure did not represent full scope of needs for all students. And so, for me, that piece was why and I think it is important to put together the full package so that people really do know what. We don't wanna ask for money in May and then come back and ask again in December, right? Like, this taxes, this affects part of your expenses to live here. You wanna be able to anticipate what you're gonna be asking for. And so I think for me, I wanted to say for the May piece, I heard from a lot of people. And you know, I spent a lot of time with the lights folks and fields folks. But I was also hearing a lot from folks who were not, that was not their primary concern, but they felt like we had missed the mark on the sort of the academic and the performing arts piece that needed attention, and that was not something that needed to been a topic of discussion. And so I personally felt like I don't feel like I can put forward another bond proposal without that piece having had the time and space that it requires to really sort of represent all student needs as many as we can. So yes, there's light stuff. Yes, there are people who feel very strongly about that, but I think there's a lot of people who really feel strongly about the other pieces. And so I personally will say, I was like, I'm not comfortable putting this up for a vote in May without having done that legwork. I know that I will hear from people like, we told you that this didn't represent everything that we need. You're too caught up on the lights in the field, you need to focus on this stuff. And so I think that I can say with me personally, those things.
Onto the funding aspect, and I'll be quick on the rest of the points, because I know there are other people that want to speak. I'm just as concerned as you are. But I don't know how to do it faster, and it's also balanced with the idea of hopefully at some point the Fed's gonna start cutting the rates, which will affect the bond rate we can borrow at. So if you have a crystal ball and you can tell me where all of this is gonna go, like.
Oh, I do, but it's not
You know, like, we're using our best judgment, we're moving with purpose, that's part of the idea of setting an end date, so that we're hitting milestones, so that we don't get to May and say. You know, we never set May as a date, so like, I guess we're going next year, and you hear these timeframes, I mean, 9 months for the SCP to review the plans.
Yeah.
For a chiller. For a chiller, it's not a complicated piece of it, right? So it's on our minds. I am worried about it, we're moving with purpose. We're watching things obviously carefully, we have John's input on this stuff, we're all watching and paying attention, but we're moving. I think as fast as prudent, making sure that we're addressing all of the needs, not just some of the needs.
Okay, it's premature to go any further because we're gonna have a reconstituted facilities committee, which meets tomorrow, by the way. So I'll hear more about maybe the prioritization of STEM and that, in terms of how we can possibly wrap that stuff into the bond. You know, my impression was that wasn't something that it's something that the facilities committee was addressing, but not something that would be part of the, you know, the next bond issue. But maybe that's wrong, maybe I mean, I'm open-minded to all that, so I appreciate the comments.
And the last part, again, I will speak for myself, not the rest of the. I will support the policy, reasonable policy on the lights usage, that was never off the table. We've been doing a lot. And so, yes, you're 100% right that it just sort of slipped off the radar a little bit, but it is never the intent to ignore it. You know, last season was a little bit of a learning, this season's gonna be a little bit more of a learning, there will be a policy, we have no interest in disturbing the neighbors. Or making people, you know, not be able to enjoy their property. We're balancing in reports. My focus is always first on the students and the student experience and providing for them before everything else. But I'm a taxpayer, I'm a neighbor, I'm your neighbor. Community member, we all want the best for the community. It's.
Well, we've got a couple months before the lights get turned on again, so hopefully in that period of time, we'll have a policy before you actually turn the lights on.
We'll come up with something reasonable that works.
We would appreciate that, thank you.
Sorry for waiting.
Sorry. I am Jennifer resident, 3 Foster Place. I have a 6th grader and 2 second graders. So I have 2 separate issues. The first one is about the technology piece. So I'm really glad that New York State law banning smart devices, since there's recognition that there's access to the internet and the amount of screen time is harmful to kids. My problem has been the take-home internet enabled device laptop that the school has given my now 6th grader since he was in 2nd grade. It gave him access to violent video games and YouTube, which has so much inappropriate content on it. It totally undermined what we were trying to block at home, and I was not allowed to put parental controls on the device when I requested it. This caused serious issues for him and for our family. I'm really glad that the school is no longer giving take-home devices to the younger grades. It's completely stopped after my son's grade, my older son's grade. But I'm wondering with the recognition by the state about screen time, is there going to be a change in emphasis about how much work is assigned on a device? And if there's no homework due on it, like this one was in 5th grade, I had maybe 5 homework assignments on this laptop all year, but every day came home with this device. If there's no homework due on it, it will default if the device stays at school. I also think the negative aspects of YouTube outweigh any educational benefits, so I'd really like the school to consider blocking access to YouTube by default on these devices. I also think that the devices should allow parental controls to be able to limit screen time, and because the kids know how to get around through filters, they know how to go to these crappy, cheap, and often violent video games on weird random sites on the internet. That's my first issue. Second one, totally separate. But I'd like to hear if the district has any plans or how the district reacts when there's an air quality alert like there was today. For example, if the air quality index is over a certain number and is considered unhealthy for children, with the schools have indoor recess.
Thank you. Not to put you on the spot. Air quality, I don't know a lot about that.
Yeah, so I think they're looking at an extreme example. How long ago was it, the Canadian wildfires that were there? It's like, that was a,
Years ago.
Sure. Alright, so that that I think heightened awareness of simple things like an app you'll get on your phone to measure air quality in your area. But in cases like that, we would, shut down elements of the HVAC system so they weren't pulling in outside air. So, temperature's gonna go up and it won't be as cool in the building, but you're managing that. The New York State Athletics has guidelines for heat on the fields. So there are guidelines. We do watch those things. I think principals across just New York State and the country look at everything from, is it too cold outside? Is it too windy if you have trees around and there may be falling branches? Is it too humid? And is the air quality poor? And those are judgments we make all the time. Those will be elements of the safety plan. Those are gonna be like tactical things that the principals would deal with, far more than gas leaks or lockouts. So yes, I'd say we are aware of air quality. Those do go into the decision-making process for outdoor PE, for athletics, and for recess. So
Just out of curiosity, have you reached out to our director of technology on the YouTube and the apps, the video games?
I've talked to both festivals that, the technology. Yes, it's in their requested controls this past year, I was told them.
I know that there are lots of state guidelines and requirements around all of this stuff, but well,
There's also, I know from, contacts, that there are other lots of other districts in Westchester that also on that test.
unless you.
I definitely will look into it. I can say that we have this as a new director of technology. And the newer devices have not only the filters that are in place here, but they also go home, which is not true with all devices. The App Store, for example, is disabled, so the kids can't just buy anything. So I do think that the new devices have better capabilities with regards to what you're talking about. But with the upcoming new technology plan, there's going to be parental input on those committees that Mike Salentano will be running. So I say keep your ears posted, right? Parents where.
That count, that's 7 times that, for those two.
Hi, everyone, I'm Maureen Louder. I am on the Community Facilities Committee. I'm the co-chair of the Lighting Committee. And I am going to go back to Jonathan's comments because I have similar supporting comments. And I know you provided feedback, so please know as I say this, I'm taking that feedback into consideration. But overall, when the capital project failed, it was disappointing for many reasons, but one of the most disappointing reasons was all the time that was lost. And but we were in a place where we had to move forward. And one of the channels where we moved forward was the Community Facilities Committee, of which I'm honored to be a part of. And like Jonathan mentioned, on April 9th, that Facilities Committee agreed to a list of what we deem to be essential items that should be put through in the situation of a mini bond. That list of essential items was also confirmed in a community survey that was sent out to the community, of which a lot of these items were voted in the majority of the community wanting. And so you add that to the community forum that many of us attended last week, in which the community is expressing that they want to bifurcate
voting on certain items to make sure that we take care of the essentials while we also try to figure out the larger plans for arts and sports, etc. And so similar to Jonathan, I urge you again to fast track the essential items. And Erin, I hear you on the feedback that you want to make sure everyone feels represented within a bond. My concern for you is that it's going to be looking like you're not listening to the community, saying that we want these essential items just done in the forms that they're telling you, like the community survey, like the community forum, and like the community facilities committee. And I think there's a way to communicate that, hey, we're doing this mini bond to bang out the essentials, to make sure that our students are safe while we talk about these larger picture items. And so when I think about the item that's at the top of the list, that the community facilities agreed on, upgrading security infrastructure, lockdown and PA, along with items like auditorium lighting, the VRS air conditioning equipment, high school hot water pumps, VRS playground and turf. What we have to ask ourselves is, gosh forbid something horrible happens from a security standpoint, similar to what we've seen in the macro environment, or gosh forbid a child gets hurt on some of the crumbling infrastructure. We have known for, it will be a year by the time of the main vote, that the community wants these and agrees on these. And so I ask you to take that into consideration when you consider how you want to approach the bond. I urge you to break it out and get the essential items done earlier. And we, in May, talk about some of the larger items that we're debating on the facilities committee.
So two more points. The first is all the fields are tested annually. So the fields are safe, security is up to date. It's just something that we're always going to be improving. So it was something that was added to the bond because we were just upgrading our current systems, but it is something that we're always upgrading throughout the course of every year as unfortunately additional incidents happen and we learn from those incidents what worked, what doesn't work. The plan last year, we added professionally trained people as workers. Because that is shown to be statistically one of the best things that you can do to limit an incident. I wasn't part of the committees, I was I think a member very early on in the process, so I apologize, I don't have all of the details. Again, my objection to going right back out was, I knew that we weren't serving STEM, I knew that we weren't necessarily addressing the VRS playground the way that in my head, I thought we were. What other items were in the main bond that what was the main bond not covered from the initial proposal? I just wanted to understand what's missing.
Sure. So sorry, the question is, what would the,
So we have the whole bond package with the whole
Right.
package, the mini bond you're suggesting, what items weren't in the mini bond that were in the? Besides the ones? Were there what other items were the? Cause this is the first time that you're here.
right, so
What was proposed to us back in whatever that was, was everything in the original with the lights. That's what was proposed to us.
And the turf in the backfield.
No, I'm sorry, not the backfield,
Yeah.
but, so no backfield, thank you for making that up. But no backfield and no lights, but everything else.
so, what's the area you call between the?
The line. So
But it was still the track, it was still the main field, chillers, water pumps, security, mirrors, playgrounds. That's right.
Yeah, the maintenance side.
Yeah,
So I just want to clarification.
Is that still what you're proposing now, and what you specifically, not speaking for ratings, are you proposing that exact same thing? You didn't mention the main field or track.
so I can share with you what the community facilities committee agreed on. Was upgrading security infrastructure, lockdown and PA. High school auditorium lighting, air conditioning, water pumps. Main field, resurface the track. And then the retaining retaining wall was gonna be included in the 25-26 budget. Yeah, it's documented in our meeting notes and I'm happy to share it with you.
So that aligns with, I'm just gonna say that aligns with what I remember, but I think one thing that's different from what you're saying is that what we were told at the time was that there actually wasn't consensus from, that there was, but maybe, I'm not, wasn't on the community facilities committee, but there was not total consensus that that was the way it goes, so somebody.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's accurate. I think there was a group that definitely was in favor of that, but I don't think we had alignment across. Or people wanted.
Yeah, I
Wanted yours.
what was trying, I'm not trying to debate. That, I just wanted to understand, I didn't hear you say BRS, was BRS
Yes, BRS
part of the
playground,
meeting?
it says replace BRS playground, turf equipment and other services.
So BRS.
So,
I'm just asking, because I was not part of that, and I hadn't heard this before,
okay,
I rejected it,
We did have a discussion, so.
we did, but I focused on just the fact. I never got past the idea of like, I can't put it back out and ask people something, they just told me I wasn't listening. And go again, so that's where I sort of stopped.
okay.
So, just,
I guess I encourage you to look at the community documentation and the community survey and the work that has been done to date, because I think the high level takeaway is it is agreed upon on the essential items, to get these done.
and just, are you asking us not to consider May, but to move it earlier, so I guess we can't do that.
I'm asking what was mentioned in the community forum last week to bifurcate the essential items. And to vote on them sooner, while the community facilities committee continues some of its larger work. That I would suggest we vote on in May, like a suggestion.
So, I understand, thank you.
Good evening, Alvoy News, 9 Dennis Lane. Touch on the first point you said, Mike, and this gentleman's name earlier, the silos. If you want the board to be heard and be felt. I know we have relationships, but if you see new faces, we need to reach out to those new faces. You can't let the regular people monopolize your time. You have to be, as a board, you have to work through them, as they would say. And that's a bit of advice. We got the new pool. It's other things that Black Cow, we can have a meeting by pool, things that the families would come out to. Families are always at the pool. Those are some, just some things that we already have going on. John, I had a question. How long do we know about the children? This is something new, man, and I'm in, but I'm not in. How long do we know about the children having these issues?
That was actually identified in the building condition survey that we all require, every school district in New York State is required to do it every 5 years. So ours was done in 2023. But at that time, it was not as urgent, because at that time we had 3 units working.
Gotcha.
And now we're down to 2.
Gotcha. So in 2023, we knew a potential of the chillers not functioning as designed was going to be an issue.
Yeah, it was not.
But all these last votings, I've only heard of lights turn. I think we have our priorities wrong, and I will be part of the facilities committee moving forward. When however we have to get, because if we're not focused on the main thing, which is the children, we're focused on STEM and education, but if the children don't have a cool place, then they're not gonna be focused on school. And I don't think that we should be saying we should push this off. It's other ways, other means possibly, we can get somebody to sponsor us. It's so many other avenues that we can potentially go to when we can focus on, like the young lady said, the priorities. We have to have a priority list. I mean, some things can't be put on a back burner. We all own homes here. I know we're not gonna put an HVAC unit on the back burner if it goes out midsummer. we're gonna find the emergency money, and we're gonna make sure our home is cool. And to me personally, I have a child in that school, he has friends in that school. This is just not possible that we should be pushing that. That's just my thoughts, it's my personal opinion. You're doing a great job. I know it's a lot of work, it's a lot of people coming back but you're doing a great job and, yeah, just, I'm not always happy and some people that are really quiet and dormant, just make more effort to, pull in the other parents, go to other meetings. But this is great, I'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And we are very mindful, we are required by state law to attend these. We actually hire an architect that goes out and prepare a whole report for us. It layers things into 3-year, 2-year, 1-year, 5-year. The chillers are something that we've known about for longer than 2023 building conditions, because the technology, the cooling stuff that they use in them actually by law changed. So, and everybody's allowed to use the older models, but you can't buy the coolant anymore. So there's actually a trade where people actually buy the coolant from old units that are being replaced with the new ones. So we do it, but we're in fine shape until we're not. So we're planning for that because, I mean, before we had the HVAC system installed in the middle school in 2022. It was pretty painful on weeks, and we don't want to repeat that for the guys. But thank you for coming. Hopefully we'll see you again in the future. Anyone else? Let's see. Please, John.
Evening, I'm Julian Peoplehouse, I live at 86 Park Street. Hope I didn't take too much of your time tonight. First and foremost, I actually want to discuss the ex officio positions at the school board. I'm currently the president of the upcoming junior class here at PHS. I was informed just this evening, actually, about the date in which the ex officio position will commence. I want to actually request that the board delays the implementation of the ex officio officers into the school board. The board had previously mentioned that the starting date would be August 26th, and there would be ex officio students, correct me if I'm wrong, that's what I believe Dr. Dempsey said. There needs to be kind of, in my opinion, more robust selection process, and there needs to be actual conversations with more of the student government representatives. I will note that there's only been one conversation. This was back in early May with Dr. Desau, and of course, I get that the abrupt resignation of Dr. Desau kind of ruined this process, but I think delaying it until late September, early October would be would make more sense. And also you need to keep in mind that these students actually represent the entirety of the student body. So again, there needs to be a more rigorous selection process. Secondly, I also want to discuss what there are potential financial alternatives to the capital project. I know that Mr. Chow had mentioned earlier that the implementation of the VRS HVAC system is a necessity. It needs to be done regardless of whether the bond is passed or not. I also know that a community member has previously mentioned that the school could be potentially liable for any injuries on the basis of negligence or lack of maintenance of facilities. So I'm wondering, are there other facilities or initiatives that should be prioritized because their financial backup plan capital project doesn't pass in May? Thank you for allowing members of the community to share their input.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And then we had a chance to talk earlier. One of the things that we talked about was me going to a student government meeting when school starts. But thinking of it in terms, certainly coming from an interim superintendent, we would consider, and I think that may be valuable for discussing it with the rest of your peers, is if we have ex officio representation, for example, at the August 26th meeting, then there's context. Then there's the ability to say, well, here's how it works. Or here's how the board works, or here's the things that you need to know that could perhaps inform. So maybe as a an exploratory pilot program. You know, kind of a scouting party to be able to go back and inform the rest of your peers. I think that very well would be valuable, but it's certainly something.
And we also recognize this was one of my primary concerns with picking the student body president and vice president. How incredibly overscheduled everyone is and how hard you will work. And so I'm sure we will take into account availability and scheduling and academics and athletics and arts. All of that into context and make sure it works for the students that are doing it.
Question of clarification, so this is obviously being driven by New York State law, and is there, I know there was a timeline for the policy that had to be in place, is there a timeline to Julian's sort of question about delaying instead of being more discussion about process? Is there a timeline by which those folks are in the law, by which those folks are supposed to start doing anything? I don't know, we can answer that later, but I think, you know, this is definitely one of those situations where something is passed with not enough time built in to have the right process, just to be honest, right? Like, we're doing this in, you know, late spring and there's summer, students are not around, and so I would be honest, I don't think that we want to give them adequate time to have the right process, based on the law started and the law requirements were. So, but I'm curious, like, I know there were rules about when the policy had been in place, I don't rules about when it's an issue of programs to start participating.
That's a great question. So what I'm gonna have to do is clarify, because the policy is July 1 of 25. Right. And I believe that July 1 of 25, that the ex officios would be in business. We can clarify that. So you're absolutely right about the it's similar to the cell phone policy or anything else we do. You know, policies can get amended and changed. I would expect that this could be a candidate for amendment and change down the road once we learn, because this is a significant change in board composition. So so I believe it was July, but I'm
Mike, do we wanna sort of, I think the other piece around, so I wanna say, I think, you know, around this state that I know the track runner, of
Cross country track.
I'm sorry. I was looking on the track specifically for a reason, because it came up at the community forum. You know, I think I just want to clarify that there have been discussions about, like, again, that these things are no longer safe or at the useful life, and I just want to clarify, we've done all the testing to show that they are safe, they are, you know, continue to be safe to use. A school or any facility, place that has a facility is always potentially liable if someone gets hurt. But I just want to reassure everybody that we've done the necessary legwork to keep these maintained, and are they in the ideal condition that we want them to be in? No, but I think, you know, each board is worth saying. We've been testing and we take student safety very seriously, so I wanted to finish that.
Well said. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
This last. About the funding. If the bond is not passed, nobody answered that question. About funding, emergency fund. John?
So the question was, what happens if the bond doesn't pass and where the money comes in alternative? So we are, I mean, I threw out the idea of like bridge financing, as John pointed out, any kind of capital project requires a vote. It's something we'll have to discuss if there are other financial mechanisms to do this. I mean, obviously, we're going to, right? It's not a question of, at least in my mind, of if we do replace the chillers and the heat pump, we do. It's just a matter of how we go about doing it, and I think, you know, we'll see if there are other ideas, other financial means to fund it. You know, it will be discussed, but not something that we can answer off the top of my head.
Mike, I have a question. What was the question?
No, sorry, that was me. Look here. Over here, John.
I have a question just on that. Oh, yeah, all right.
Yeah. You've got another 5 minutes, so.
Like, people have a hard time hearing me. I just have a question, if you fund, say the chillers from the fund balance or from the reserve account. Would that, and not through capital project, would those repairs and replacements be eligible for state aid? Or do we lose the opportunity for state aid if we have to shortcut the funding process and go directly to current funds?
I would try it, sort of get it wrong, and then right.
No, I actually have one. So. Anytime you have capital projects. The voters must approve.
Correct.
Okay, so even when we have the interfund transfers, these are projects, for example, for this summer, we did middle school backlog, you approved it. I don't mean you personally, but
I voted for it, sorry, approved it, sure.
because you voted for the budget.
I did.
And this is a part of the budget, and therefore, when we submit it to SEP for approval, it's a you approve.
Mhm.
Okay, so you have to have, anytime you have a capital project, you have to have voters approval. We do have sufficient funds at this point to do the chillers, but we don't have a vote. Okay, so that's one thing. In my head, when you do a project, at that time, when we did the December vote, it was estimated at $1 million. So we have $1.1 million in fund that. But the problem is that you really want to maximize the use of your funds, right? So our building aid is at 54%. So we have $1.1 million. We really can do over $2 million work because we'll get $1 million. So we just go out and do the chiller and do 1.1 million. You'll get $540,000. But you're not maximizing the money, right? Because otherwise you could have done something else. With $2 million.
By packaging them together.
You package it together, right?
So I think to shorthand it, I think the answer is yes, we still get state aid, foundation aid for it. I think there's, I think there's a mathematical financial aspect to this too, where you're borrowing, the state aid is coming back in the same sort of advertised fashion. So it's basically offsetting the debt service payments that you're making along the way, as opposed to just taking the cash out of your pocket, spending it, and getting reimbursed over the useful life. Right, so you're effectively then.
So let's make this simple, because I mean, I'm a simple guy and I'm now boggled. If let's just say the chillers cost $1 million and you have the opportunity to finance them with a bond or pay for them out of current funds. Is there, you're getting state aid, 54% of state aid back in either instance, so where is the, I'm sorry, where do we lose the leverage to do bigger projects in that instance?
You see, if I have $1 million.
Yeah.
I would like to do $2 million.
Okay.
The reason is because I use my $1 million and the other $1 million is coming from the state.
Okay. So in this instance, in my example, you're doing $1 million project, you're getting $500,000 back, so you can do a $500,000 project.
But we have other projects, we could do more. That's the way I'm thinking.
I think it's the timing aspect that affects it, right? So think about it this way. You have, and John, correct me if I'm screwing this up, but you have $100,000, you can buy $100,000.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
You can pay cash.
Yeah.
And then get a rebate, but that rebate comes back a little bit at a time over a course of 15 years, because that's how the foundation aid reimbursement works. It's not like they cut you a check immediately for 500, here you go. It's dribbled out over a series of the useful life of the project that you built.
Yep,
I said everything somewhat accurately at this point. So now you're at $100,000, and over time, you're gonna get little bits in back over time.
Mhm.
As opposed to, you take out a car loan. And you only put down $50,000.
Yeah.
Alright, and then your payments are made by the amounts being reimbursed by the government. So you end up net positive.
So it's we're really just talking about timing.
It's a timing liquidity issue.
And also to maximize your money, so I think, let me try, I'll try to use the,
We can do this afterwards,
Yeah.
you don't need to pour Mike's this job.
my car, okay, so. If right now I have $100,000 in my bag, so I can go out and buy $100,000, but that's a very expensive car, but. I can buy
You're making it
$100,000.
easy.
I drive.
So very else, actually,
I say $100,000, I can go out and buy $100,000 car.
Got it.
And I get $50,000 back.
Yeah.
However, if I have 100,000, I can actually go out and buy a $200,000 car. It's a much better car. And I get $100,000 back. So that's really to maximize. The same thing with the capital project. You can actually maximize.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
no, but that's okay, I will go through the math with you at offline, thank you though.
If he doesn't get.
So there is financial aid available in either case.
Because this is instructional space and durable, yes.
Got it, thank you.
I want to keep stressing this because a field, but standalone, the field, if we do just field, we don't get it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that offline too, thank you.
I don't think he.
I'm sure that.
Order, we use the gavel. No, I want to. Would anyone else like to speak?
Sorry, I'm gonna add more. So what I would say is to your question of what happens if the bond fails and the chillers, well, I think we need to look at that bifurcation of putting things in the right basket and de-risking that. And I think that's something that we need to do. We need to ensure that those absolutely critical items are there and can pass. Right, and if we have to break them out into multiple propositions, then we'll have to break them out. That's my opinion. But I think that's something we can do.
And you can have multiple propositions on the same date, right? So we were talking about the possibility of breaking them out on different dates, doing them sooner. Sound like the chillers, whether we do them in December or we do them in May, they're happening at the same time, right? But maybe there are other pieces of that where that might not be the case. We can go down that far, but so we can, but you still have to bundle them in ways that maximize the state aid. So it's and maybe unnecessarily complicated, but we don't make the rules. So, but we do, I think, to John's point, and I agree. However we structure the next, bond or bonds, we need to structure them in a way that the essential items don't fail. And I will say with, I think, a fair amount of confidence, this community has been clear that whether it's they disagree with the lights, or they disagree with the backfill, or they disagree with the fact that we didn't put steam on. If we can give them a package that they feel represents them, they will pass at minimum the pieces that they know are essential, right? That's what we have to figure out how to do.
And I think we look, Hastings recently did one in June. They had three propositions, I believe, and they passed at various levels. And the third one to convert grass fields to dirt was the most contentious one, and that one barely passed, but it passed. So if we put out various options, which I think we need to, then I think we're gonna see that feedback and the community will have their opportunity to comment by voting.
Well said. That being said, is there anyone else that would like to speak publicly? We will stay after to speak privately. There being none, I am now going to close recognition of the audience. We are now going to have the second reading of policy 7316, use of internet-enabled devices during the school day. Can I get a motion to approve the second reading?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? So I'd like to again point out and reiterate that we are passing the policy in order to comply with law. It is what the law requires. This will be a learning process. We obviously will be informed by our students, our parents, and our teachers on this, and it will evolve over time, was my suspicion and hope. With that being said, can I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 0. We'll now move on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
That goes to Laura Donna. We have a second.
Second.
Lucas with the second. Any
Third.
comments? Questions? Maybe. Well, anyone else in here? There being none, can I get all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed 5-0. With that, just gonna ask really quickly, and I know, I really appreciate you guys staying as late as you have for this. Starting a new practice, you know, we're constantly self-evaluating ourselves here. And I was reminded by a former board president of something that he used to do, which I think is valuable. So with that, Laura Donna, you have to give us a little update on some of your committee.
Yes, sorry, thank you.
So I met with the SEPTA presidents this past week, and they had expressed to me how well ESY has been going and the appreciation that they have to all the teachers, the administration, and the staff that actually are making it very possible. I also encourage those who can, individuals who can, to join SEPTA, as it is really a wealth of knowledge and information and support within our community.
Thank you, and thanks for serving as the liaison for that. Lucas?
The New York State School Board Association is meeting for their annual convention on October 23rd through 25th, and I will be attending. Many other board members who attend as well. They go through workshops that inform us of different topics, some pressing, some sort of ongoing. And I went last year and it was very insightful. This year, I'll be doing the same.
Thank you for doing that. You take a very heavy workload in going to the West Pod, the BOCES and the NISBA stuff, so really appreciate it. You and John went last year, and thank you, because I think we all learned a lot from you when you came. John?
Yeah, so community forum last week, I thought was well attended, great feedback from everybody, so it was very much appreciated. I don't know if anyone's heard of the capital project that we're working on now, but we have a facilities meeting tomorrow at 3 p.m. And so right here in the library, right?
Anything there? John? Again, thank you everyone for attending and your engagement. We need more of it. We need more engagement in all aspects of our community. I think that's something that I think we all love about our community. And so I encourage you all to continue coming and joining us and continuing to share your thoughts and opinions with us. With that, can I get a motion to close the meeting? Goes to Eric. Can I get a second?
Second.
That goes to Lucas. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.